Well, thank you for welcoming us to have a conversation with Al Granger. Dr. Granger and I go back quite a ways, actually. I know Al since 1992, I guess, when he first started
91?
his endodontic program at Columbia.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just introduce him, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Farkas, who will have a conversation with him. But went to Howard for his dental degree.
Correct.
Went and did a general practice residency program at Harlem Hospital. And it was a unique program at Harlem Hospital.
Yes.
Director James McIntosh, who I knew, a great man.
Driving force.
Driving force.
Mm-hmm.
And Alan Formicola, who was the dean at Columbia at that time. They developed a very, very unique program that I think has had tremendous payback to dental education, the community, students, mentorship, you name it. It has been just a driving force. And I'm going to take the liberty of asking Al one question. And that question is about this program.
Correct.
Al Formicola and Jim McIntosh created a program in which they recognized that the Black African American community, as poorly represented in general dental educational realms, they were even more underrepresented in specialty areas. So they developed a program in which Harlem Hospital, after finishing a general practice residency there, those residents could come to Columbia for specialty training without cost, so that they could become specialists and be back in the community and be role models. And just an incredible program. It was begun just before Al started his program in like 1990. So this was 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think it was a real force. Yes. I really do. So I'd like you to comment.
Yeah, well, we did have to commit to teaching for at least 5 years at either Harlem Hospital or Columbia. And it worked out well. It was a great experience. And there were a number of students down at Harlem Hospital that we never even thought about going into the specialties. You know, we got comfortable, we got out of school, or, we're making some money, everybody's happy. But there was another world out there that was available to us. And when those doors opened, we jumped on it, and we were very successful. Yeah. We just, opportunity. Yeah. Opportunity and mentorship and letting us know what's available. And then it just one little push and boom. And it's been very successful.
And you were
for Columbia and Harlem Hospital.
And you were one of, I can remember, we were talking about this before, that one of 5, I think, individuals. Dr. Bolin and Dr. Evans and
Correct.
Dr. White. Shelby White became the head of prosthodontics at
Correct.
Columbia.
Yes.
John Evans is a full-time faculty member there. Bolin taught there for up until very recently.
Yes.
Just an incredible mentorship program.
And that's what you want.
That's what
we pay back to school.
That's right.
But we also, it was a huge benefit for us. Yeah. I couldn't be more thankful. Yeah. Right?
Anyway, we welcome you to Touro, and I look forward to listening to your interview with Dr. Farkas.
All right, I'm looking forward to doing it.
Thank you, Dean Myers, for that introduction. I want to welcome everybody for this first issue, if you want to call it that, of TCDM Talks, which are insights with dental industry experts, innovators, and educators. And today I have a conversation with Dr. Al Granger, noted endodontist on Long Island, noted educator, all-around great guy.
I try to be.
Well, I think you succeeded.
There you go.
And in the introduction that Dean Myers used, it occurred to me that you are the living embodiment of Touro's mission statement. Okay, our mission statement is to graduate outstanding students who will utilize a complex knowledge base and sophisticated perceptual skills to deliver outstanding service to their communities.
All right.
You have done that, and you continue to do that through both your dentistry and your community service. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about, your history and your family's deep history in dentistry in Long Island. Mm-hmm. And so maybe you want to start off, you were telling us a little bit about your great-grandfather, I guess.
Yes.
So let's
my
start
great-grandfather, in 1875. He was a kid, 16, 17 years old, got off the boat in Philadelphia from Barbados, and he was taken by a Quaker family, and they educated him. Quaker families believe in education. You know, it's a culture in their family. They sent him to Bucknell ultimately, and from Bucknell he went to University of Vermont Medical School, and he's a physician. He was a physician. So I think he graduated University of Vermont in about 1890.
Wow.
And he had 6 sons. 5 of them went to Dartmouth, 1 of them went to University of Pennsylvania. 3 of them were physicians, 2 of them were dentists, 1 of them was my grandfather. And 1 of them was a social worker who went to University of Pennsylvania. He was slumming it. He didn't go to the club. But you're talking about in 18...
He had a real job.
Right. And you're talking about, in 1910 to 1925. Those are the years when all this was happening. So this is a long time ago.
Not a long time ago, but it would seem to me that these things were difficult to accomplish.
Very
much
difficult.
more difficult to accomplish.
Very difficult. Very difficult. But remember, he grew up in a culture of learning.
Right.
Culture of learning. And that was very important to my great-grandfather, and who happened to be and his wife. They both came from families that education was important, and moved on. Yeah. So my Uncle Lester, who I'm named after, my second name, he was the executive director of the Urban League for 20 years before Whitney Young. So they're very accomplished. That group were unbelievable. And so my father and my uncle, my dad was a dentist. He went to Howard University. And my mother started at University of Pennsylvania Dental School and ended up, after she met my dad, she moved over to Howard. So they both graduated in Howard in 1944.
So both your parents were dentists?
Both my parents, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so my dad had his diploma in one hand and his enlistment papers in the Army in the other hand, and he went overseas. And so while he was overseas, my mother came back to New York to be with her family. My dad was my other grandfather, my mother's father, was a dentist as well. And the families knew each other. Obviously, there weren't that many black dentists back in the day, so that's how they kind of met and hooked up. And while she was there waiting for my dad to come back, she said, well, I may as well keep going. So she went to Columbia and became an orthodontist. And he still wasn't home. So she sent him a note and said, there's a house available in Glen Cove. I'd like to buy it. We could put an office on there when he comes back. Now, he wanted to go back to Harrisburg, where he was from, because his dad had a huge practice. He died when he was in dental school, but he had a huge practice there and very well known in the area. But, he was still overseas. So she started to practice in practice in Glen Cove.
So it's true that women make better decisions.
Well, if you pick the right one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the only decision you have to make.
Usually they're the ones that are making the choice.
Right,
you just
exactly.
think you're making the choice. So anyway, so she started to practice, and when my dad got back from overseas, he started his practice there. And, he could speak Italian, and Glen Cove is a huge Italian population, and his office took off.
Wow.
Yeah, but, my grandfather practiced down the road, and his practice, he was the first black full-time dentist on Long Island. And how'd that happen? Back in the 1920s, they used to go to Glen Cove for vacation during the summers.
Sure.
And, they rented this little house, and the next door neighbor was a nurse and said, Doc, why don't you start a practice here part-time, because nobody will treat the immigrants, right? And who are the immigrants? They're Irish, they're Italian, they're Russian, there's a black population there as well. So we started practice part-time, and it blew up so fast that he had a practice in Brooklyn that he sold, and they moved to Glen Cove full-time. Wow. So about 1925 or 27, I think it was 27, they just moved to Glen Cove, and he started his practice and did very well. Yeah. So, and my mother and her brother graduated dental school at Howard University. My brother and my sister and myself were all dentists. My sister took over my dad's practice. And my brother, once I got my practice and endo started, he was in the Army. He was a dentist in the Army. And my practice was going pretty well, and I needed some help. So I asked him, why don't you come out and go back to endo school and give me a hand? And he came out, went to endo school.
And he actually listened.
And he did, yeah. But the Army actually made him stay in there. They paid for him to go to endo school.
So throughout your family's history, there is there is service to the community. There's service to dentistry.
Yeah.
This has been a tradition throughout their lives throughout your life?
Yeah, well, my dad was on the YMCA board for 30 years in Glen Cove. My mother was on the chairman of the library board for a number of years in Glen Cove. My brother was a village trustee in Sag Harbor for about 15 years. Ran for mayor, lost by 2 votes.
You lost by 2 votes.
Lost by 2 votes. Every vote counts. And I was a city councilman in Glen Cove. And I was on the Y board, and I'm on the board of Northwell.
What did your grandfather tell you about practicing in the 20s? I mean, what was that like?
Well, like I said, there was a large underserved population. People didn't want to treat immigrants. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Right.
It's going on now, right? And the immigrants then were the people now who don't want to accept the immigrants nowadays.
Right.
Again.
There's been a history in New York State of that, different waves of immigrants displacing others,
Exactly.
moving up the ladder.
Moving up the ladder, it's the American dream. So
I don't think enough people realize that, by the way. And I don't know
know.
if we're getting enough education in that.
I don't think we are.
Because
civics is gone.
Civics is gone, but I come from a family from Europe.
Mm-hmm.
My father was in the concentration camp.
Oh.
And so we really have an understanding of how lucky we are to be here.
Correct.
And I don't think people really appreciate that all the time at this point.
I know. I don't know how you
But
change
your
it.
family seems to have appreciated it from the get-go, which is so
yes.
beautiful. And
Well,
so,
we're blessed.
know.
We're a blessed family because, again, it's a culture in your family. Education is really the base. And in our family, you had to educate yourself. It wasn't even, whether you're going to go to college or not was not a question.
I think, by the
And
way,
that's for 5 generations.
that
It was
ties
not even
all
a question.
cultures together.
Of course.
The education, no matter where you come from or no matter what you look like,
Correct.
the education will allow you to thrive.
Yes.
And I think that one piece is not really well understood.
Correct.
If it was well understood, a lot of the problems that we have now would not
Would be gone.
there, would be gone.
Exactly.
So it's kind of our duty to, we're doing what we can with education at Touro College of Dental Medicine.
Mm-hmm.
That's at a different level. You're not talking about that level. You're talking about the level of 8th grade and high school.
Life. Exactly.
And life.
Yeah.
And you said something
Because
before.
it starts from when you're a child.
Right.
Reading to your child, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Having respect for elders. Having manners. It all builds the person and it grows as you go up, right?
It's so important and not stated lately.
Exactly.
And what do you think we can do about that?
You just got to keep reaching out, keep reaching back, keep trying to help.
I think you got to convert
the next
people to this
generation.
idea and get them to do it on their own. The more people you convert, the bigger the crowd becomes, and then eventually maybe you make some progress.
But it needs people like me, it needs people like you, it needs people like Dr. Hall to reach back and say, it's doable. Come along. Follow me. I'll show you what to do. But you really got to teach the parents to raise their kids like that, right? So the kids alone can't figure it out. The parents have to direct the kids because the parents are around the kids most of the time.
So tell me about your endodontic practice. How much joy does that give you in going to work every day? I got to tell you before you say that, that when I was starting this, building the school, I used to come here. There was not a car in the parking lot,
Right.
and
Now you
before
can't find the space.
COVID, we needed a valet service because
Correct.
we have 700 spots and there was no parking. So I had my son here I did a filling on him one day, and I said to him every day I sit at this table outside. In good weather and have lunch.
Correct.
And I think about, all the blessings that have been given to me
course.
and how much I've been able to see over the time.
Yes.
So how does that work with your endodontic practice?
Well, sometimes you don't have people react to certain things, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Okay, so when I graduated my endodontic program at Columbia University, very prestigious school, I could not get a job in endodontic practice. No one would hire me. All my classmates got hired in endodontic practices, no problem.
Right.
I couldn't find a spot. So, because I came from the background I do, it wasn't really an issue. I said, I got to do it on my own. I'm going for it, okay? I kept pushing forward. And the same guy who they said couldn't attract refers, I have 3 offices, about to have 5 offices. I have 50 employees, 10 endodontists working for me.
In a sense, it worked out better for you.
It worked out better.
It worked out better.
But that's because of my background. We're talking about minority communities, but there's a huge white population that's uneducated and has the exact same issue. It's just not as visible in this area. Talk about Appalachia for that matter.
Right.
You have a huge, very poor population that could use mentorship because their culture and their families are in education and they can't get them out of the cycle.
Right.
And there has to be something said about taking first generation students for school, right? Who maybe not have come from an educated population, right? And helping them move forward because they came from a weaker background, but they're still smart. They just need a little push, and they'll catch up eventually.
One of the things that I found, and this is with people in my culture, with all the students, is that as they go through school, then the most interesting thing is that their perspective changes.
Right. Exactly.
But radically.
Yes.
And so this is another thing. The students need to see the complete perspective of dentistry.
Each family you lift and get educated and move forward, that succeeding generation will be lifted and move forward.
I have so much help here with Alex and the entire faculty who are committed to educating the best dentists possible.
Correct.
But we're focusing on dentistry, and we're not understanding that dentistry is really a vehicle to improve the society.
Yes.
And that's kind of what we should be doing. And that's kind of, I think, what you were doing when you were the council person.
City councilman.
Council person.
I was city councilman in Glen Cove for 11 years. Yeah.
How did they receive you on that?
So I finished my endo program, and we moved to Glen Cove, my wife and I, and we had our two kids. They're just born. It was 94. And a new administration had come into the city council in Glen Cove. It was a mayor and 6 council people. And one of the councilmen got divorced and had to leave town. So the mayor at the time, he said, you know what, Glen Cove is a diverse population and there's never been any diversity on city council. And we had met each other, known each other over years. He said, let's see if Granger wants to do it. So he called me and said, come on, let's do it. Join me. And I did. And it was a great experience. Yeah. And Tom Swazi is now he became county executive, and then he was now a
So
congressman.
I was in Long Island when Tom Swazi was county executive.
Yeah, very dynamic guy. And part of the reason why I had the guts to just open my practice, because when you open a practice, you're borrowing a lot of money,
Sure.
and then pushing ahead and bringing in associates and building another office, is because I saw the guts he had to just step out and run against Elliot Spitzer for governor when nobody wanted him to. That takes guts,
Right.
And just to face the public and get beat up constantly. And again, as a
It
councilman,
makes
it's the
you
same
wonder
thing.
why anybody would do that.
Exactly. But then I realized that there's no limits to what you do. You just gotta go for it. Go for it. So that's my personality now. Go for it. Who's gonna stop me?
Nobody except yourself.
Nobody except yourself. Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
So, fantastic story, obviously. How many associates do you have now?
We have 10 associates, and I have 2 partners. These guys started working for me in 2005.
Right.
Yeah. And one of them joined me as a partner in 2010, and the other just 2 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. And
It sounds like a growing business,
we're
I think.
Yeah. Well, Dean Formicola, and James McIntosh, right? Because of them, there's 50 people working on Long Island. You plant a seed, and you don't know how big that plant's going to be.
Exactly.
You just got to plant a seed and fertilize it.
Exactly.
Right? So even now, I teach endo in a residency program, Harlem Hospital. So I'm there weekly, and I speak with my residents, and I try to feed them this information. It says, look, I don't care who your patient is. They want to be respected, they want to be listened to, and they want to be cared for. And I don't care what population you go to, if you take care of those 3 things, you're going to be successful and your practice will grow. It's about taking care of people, listen to them, respect them, and do the best you can taking care of them, and you're going to be just fine. And I would hold true to that in just about anything you do.
I realized at the beginning we could teach what was being taught in 85, but what good was that going to do? Because the real world was expanding.
Correct.
And because of people like Alan Durham, which is kind of weird because I was friends with his father for 30 years.
Right.
And then, they went into digital. They became friends with the heads of 3Shape. We went out to Copenhagen.
Oh, nice.
We developed relationships with them. We went out to California to be friends with the people from DG Shape. And it's kind of a symbiotic relationship because they need us to teach our students this so that so the students will actually use the machines and understand the technology. A lot of the problem with technology is
people are afraid of it.
And they don't know how to use it.
Right,
and they don't know how to use it. And
the next generation comes not afraid of technology like we
only if
If they're
we
taught early.
If they're taught in dental
And they know
school.
it's available.
If you think about it, the paradigm has always been that we teach somebody something in dental school and then they take it on the real world.
Mm-hmm.
But because these technologies were flipped, they were invented in the real world, put to use in the real world, and not taught in dental school,
Right.
that became the problem.
Right.
So we're committed to solving that, and we're on our way to solving that. And I think most of our students, I mean, we just had a couple of alumni meetings, and we're seeing, the first fruits of our labor where these students are going to residency programs. Some of the residency programs have scanners and other things.
Right.
And
some don't.
the program directors
Yeah.
are amazed the fact that how much digitally forward they are.
All right, so now I'm gonna get deep on you here. What you just told me correlates exactly with the issue as far as trying to get more minorities or poor people into the
Really?
professions.
How? That's so
Okay.
interesting.
Exposure early.
Okay.
Show them what's available. There's a world going on out there that they don't even know about. You expose them to it, and they can integrate it into their lifestyle and grow with it. It's all about exposure. Yeah. It's all about and
Yeah,
understanding.
okay, but then I'm going to go back to you and
Okay.
say, how do we expose them to it? What do we have to do? And we're willing to do it.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we're just about to release these scholarships, these
Right.
Patterson scholarships.
Correct.
And we hope we have students who we can give it to because there are not that many applicants.
Okay.
How do we get the applicant pool up? How do we, we're willing to do, for example, bring high schoolers here, give them a day of, show what dentistry is like,
Correct.
things like that.
Yeah.
Those are easy things to do.
Okay.
Maybe inspire
They're
them.
not that easy.
They're not that easy?
They're not that
Okay.
easy. My wife runs a program through
Right, through
Hofstra,
Hofstra.
and she's been very successful. And luckily, a lot of people want to support it. Mentors, physicians, nurses. But it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of organization. And they get promising students from some of the underserved high schools, right? And they're brought in. They're given college prep courses, SAT prep courses, right? To get their base strong. It's the base that people need help with, right? They're bright kids, they just don't have the base, right? And so they go from high school off to college, okay? They have another program called the Zucker School of Medicine Pipeline Program, right? And now it takes them while they're in college. Obviously, they have to have a good grade point average. It does the same thing. Gives them DAT or MCAT prep. It's MCAT prep courses, right? And get them ready to take the MCAT so they get a good score. And then helps them with college medical school applications when the time comes for that. It's a beautiful thing.
It's a very beautiful thing. Anyway, it was more than a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm sure that we'll be doing this again, and we'll have some relationship where we're all together. But I'd like to bring in Alex for a little bit just to say hello.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm Alexander Hall. I'm the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Touro Dental School. And it is indeed a pleasure to have Dr. Granger with us. And I am happy to be able to just interview him. And first of all, recognizing the world that we live in, many times African Americans are showcased as being highly trained athletes or very talented singers. The successful people are always portrayed as being those kind of naturally talented people that rise to the top.
Correct.
And it's rare that we have a person that comes from an educational style background that's risen to the top. And what's even more impressive is the fact that you come from a generational lineage
Correct.
of people that have been at the forefront of our community.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes it a real honor knowing that Touro, the university system, is trying desperately to stay ahead with leadership, and Touro Dental School is trying to stay in the forefront of what our country needs in order to help to alleviate some of the disparities in healthcare. And without saying a whole lot more about how proud I am of you, could you give us some insight as to your thoughts about the climate that we're in as far as health disparities are concerned, and what we as health providers can do to try to to try to get other African Americans to go into healthcare.
Yeah. Oh, so I want to say one thing, okay? And I don't want to be credited with being special because of my family. This is just what you do. It's the culture of my family, right? So I look at me and I realize I'm no different than anybody out there if they had the culture of learning in their family, okay? You see these people in sports. If you see them and listen to them, they're incredibly smart, but their family focusing more towards sports rather than education, right? So that's where they went. They're still smart. Doesn't mean they're not classically educated. They're smart, right? But they went a different direction. Even some of the drug dealers you see on TV, right? They may be very smart. They have big enterprises. They have businesses, right? They're living on the streets doing the best they could, okay? They didn't have a culture of education. If somebody early pointed them in the direction of educating themselves, right? Now I'm talking about early, reading, writing, arithmetic at a young age, and force the importance of school. I'm sure you did it with your family. Mm-hmm. It's been happening generationally in my family. So I'm no different than just any other African American you'll see. It's just in my family, education was stressed. And so somehow we gotta get folks early understanding that education is the most guaranteed path to success in the future, right?
I can understand.
Yeah. So, you know, my wife's program, Zucker, at the Pipeline program, Zucker School of Medicine, they're getting kids in high school. Sometimes high school's not even soon enough. It really isn't soon enough, okay? But there are kids there. They can use that support early, right? Because their school districts may be overstressed and can't handle guiding them in the right direction, okay? On the college level, you get kids with potential. They may not be as advanced because they didn't have the base knowledge that a lot of these kids have. 4, 5, 6 grade, 7th grade, 8th grade is base knowledge, right? So they get to college, they may not be as strong as some of the other students because they don't have that base knowledge, right? So you got to help them get that base knowledge and move them forward, right? Sure. So as far as, you know, if I was in your position, I might visit some of the colleges and get some of these kids into sciences in their freshman, sophomore year and get them in here and let them see what their future could be and give them some courses so they can strengthen their science courses. Give them some prep to strengthen their science courses. Give them some courses to strengthen their DAT when they take the dental aptitude test, right? Yes. And then, if they spend time with you, learning with you, when it comes time for them to go to dental school, where are they gonna look?
Sure.
They're gonna look with you. I think Columbia had a similar program, and it's been very successful for Columbia, right? Sure. So it's not about the highest grade. They find a number, which is, you know, still one of the highest grade levels, you know, score levels. I'm talking about Columbia, right? Mm-hmm. Once you score over that level, they pick their class. Sure. All right? Sure. That level is hard to attain, but that level is still high. You don't need the absolute 100%. You know, you could probably fill the class with people who score 100% on all the dental aptitude tests, right?
Yes, without a doubt.
Right? Sure. But then, you know, you have a sterile group of kids who are very, very bright. Okay, yes. If you want a little diversity, a little mix in the class, you find a level that's still, Columbia has the first or second highest level of DAT aptitude test scores in the country, but they pick that level and they pick their student body out of that level. Oh, yeah. So you got to prep kids to the point where they can get a good enough DAT score and make sure they're doing well in college and moving forward. And if you help them get there, they'll participate in your school. Sure. Yeah.
So do you believe in the thought that for a youngster to want to be someone, mm-hmm. they need to see someone that looks like them to understand that Absolutely. They could be there?
Mentorship is huge.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So if you look at the news or the newspapers, we don't exist. They don't talk about us. Yes. They talk about the rapper, they talk about the singer, they talk about the guy who knocked you in the head going down the street, you know, right? Yes. So we don't exist. Yes. Somehow we need the exposure to say there are a lot of medical professionals who are African American who are there, they're successful, they're cultural learning in their family, and they're doing very well.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
yes.
I don't know how you get that information out. Black History Month is one way to expose people, let them know, yes, they're very successful, hardworking people that did very well and lived the American dream. You can do it.
Yes, yes,
You can do it. Come, I'll help you.
yes.
Just meet me halfway.
I have to completely agree with that. In fact, we had such a very nice program. And I mean, unfortunately, February is almost over. I wish we could live it for the rest of March and April. But our Black History was really exposed this year. We had Dr. Leo Rouse, who was
Good man.
he brought about such a phenomenal message. And the thing that's interesting is that it wasn't a message to just African Americans. I could see African Americans looking at him as being a role model or someone to look up to. But what's even more important, and it's important for us to have you here, because non-African Americans need to be exposed to some phenomenal people. And I'm not just saying that because it's you that's in front of me. I'm saying that because they're people that have achieved very lofty goals that are African Americans, and non-African Americans need to be exposed to them. And I thought that the dental school in itself was really on the forefront this month. And it's so nice that we're sort of ending up the month by having you with us. I was just touched just by having the spirit of the community that we have here after we had this program that spotlighted health disparities in our country, and just to hear students, non-African American in particular, to speak to me about how they recognize the fact that we exposed them to things that they hadn't understood.
Correct.
So this kind of conversation needs to be had, and I am thrilled to hear about your wife's program. Are you married up? No doubt.
I did.
Yeah.
Her dad is a dentist as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I'm excited about even learning more about that, and
Yeah.
the quite possibility of getting involved with her in
Okay,
that.
that's cool.
Yeah.
She'd gladly help you along.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you.